Welcome to a special edition of Stories of Brisco and Bradshaw. I would be John Layfield, known as Bradshaw, and my dear friend, my Chickasaw native, Chickasaw Hall of Famer, Mr. Gerald Brisco, as always. And we have got one of the biggest songwriters, song singers, sellers of all time, movie star, a best-selling author, a philanthropist, and just a American icon, one of the greatest American icons that we've had in this wonderful country of ours. He's got this huge philanthropy arm now, a new song out, a collaboration called One about the water crisis in Tanzania, an incredible project. He is Mr. Pat Boone. Mr. Boone, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, great to be with you guys too. I appreciate all of that. In fact, I should be really tired uh, after all of that, but no, I'm in good physical shape. I broke my femur recently. I'm recovered from that, and I'm back in the gym now with a trainer twice a week, and I'm doing heavy duty training just to stay in good shape and because I want to keep going for 2 or 3 more years.
Well, Mr. Boone, you just turned 90 years old and you look remarkably well. I have an older brother also that just turned 90 a few days before your birthday. So happy belated birthday. Or in June, no, it's June 1st to come up here? Or what?
Yep, I'll be 91 June 1st. Yep.
91, wow, awesome. So happy early birthday then for that, your 91st birthday. But yeah, as John was saying, man, we're thrilled to have you on here. I mean, and you probably get tired of saying that. You know, when I was growing up, I'm just a few years behind you, but growing up in Oklahoma, and when the first TV first come out, one of the first faces I remember seeing on there a lot was Mr. Pat Boone. So when we had the opportunity to get you on, our producer said, "Would you like Pat Boone?" I said, "I nearly had a heart attack." I said, "Are you kidding me?" When I like Pat Boone, man, I'd go crazy if we got Pat. So welcome aboard here. You know, read what you've done since you've kind of, I'll never say retired when we're our age. We don't retire, we just slow down a little bit. That's what
Yeah,
I'm trying to
that's right.
tell John.
We
Well, I'm
just got
trying to tell
it
John,
away.
yeah, that's
Well, let me just explain to listeners and viewers how this is possible for you to have heard all of this stuff about me all this time. I started my actual career in 1955, made my
wow.
first record. Well, that's 70 years ago. And I think if I haven't done the arithmetic, huh? What
70 years.
70? What did you say, Dana? It was not
First
70.
record was 53.
Oh, 53. That's right, in Nashville. But nobody, well, some people heard it, but not many people heard it. A little label at that time, Republic. But since then, Frank Sinatra has recorded some 100, I think some 1,500 songs. Bing Crosby, who was my early role model, has recorded 2,000. But I have recorded 2,700 songs
Wow.
and am still recording. And nobody's ever going to touch that because
Yeah.
it's too expensive to record today.
Yeah. Yeah.
Besides, who's buying records?
Yeah.
Nobody's buying records.
Yeah, and at this age, when you go into a recording, your wonderful song "One" that I've been listening to since we've been doing research here, and all the collaboration you have with the marvelous country stars out there in the
Yeah.
Nashville, it had to be. How have you found recording systems have changed and everything?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, it's changed dramatically because when I was first recording, I was doing discs. They were 33 and a third or 45 RPM discs. And then, of course, we went to cassettes, and then we went to uh, tapes, and now we're it's all just it's X's and O's. And how in the world X's and O's can become mellifluous sounding voices? I don't know, but that's what it is. And because of that, you can record at home. You can record in somebody's garage. Of course, you can go into big studios, and people do, and we did with one. But it's such a complicated, expensive process. And then again, as I say, it's daunting to think that though I have recorded so many songs that I'm proud of, and many of which I wrote, but hardly anybody's ever heard. because I think if you, as you know, you can be as creative as all get out, but if you don't have any way to market what you're doing,
Right.
it's almost futile. I was listening today to some of the wake up songs on my phone, and I can wake up to my own singing, and I recorded a song so many years ago with well, it was an Ink Spots. I don't know if you remember the Ink Spots.
Yeah, of
If I
course, yeah.
didn't care, and you always hurt the one you love, and oh, my echo, my shadow, and me. Those were songs by a group called the Ink Spots. They were a black group. They were the first to cross over into pop music many, many, many years ago. And my daughter Debbie, 2 or 3 years ago, knew that I was a big fan of the Ink Spots because they were just unique. They were incredible. They appealed to everybody, and the race didn't seem to matter. And so they were landmark groups. So Debbie gave me a collection she found of their songs, and I thought people her age and younger don't even know who this group is. They've never heard them, and they never will. So I decided to do an album, a tribute to the Ink Spots. And I got a group from Mississippi, an a cappella group, and I've forgotten their names. Take Six. They didn't even use musical instruments. They just sang a cappella. And I got them to record an album of the Ink Spots' favorite huge hits with them and the group Ink Spots and Take Six. And then I recorded one song that was a record with Ella Fitzgerald and the Ink Spots. And I just put my voice and Take Six on that. And you would swear that we're in the studio together singing the song called no, not Java Jive, Cowboy something, Cowboy. Anyway, we recorded the song, and you swear we're in the studio together. But so it's a masterpiece, and it wakes me up every morning. But nobody but me and Debbie have ever heard this incredible album. We just couldn't get it played anywhere.
Wow.
So I outlived so many of the other artists, including Elvis and so many of the others. And here I am still going. But it's becoming more and more senseless to keep recording, though I do, because whoever's going to hear it is the way to market the product. Well, this song one that you just mentioned, of course, we have found and are finding ways, including you, to market the song to more people, to millions of people. And we are finding the way to do it, but it's what we're doing right now. Me talking about it with people who want to hear about it.
The song one that you have, the collaboration that you have, it's unbelievable the amount of stars that you have on one video, and also the what you're doing in Tanzania with the water shortage. I've worked just north of where you were there, and I guess Loibor Salt, where you have your right.
Yes.
I worked in Arusha, and so I know the area very well. It's
wow, really, boy, that thrills me because I can't even pronounce that name as you just pronounced Lobosoy. Yeah, and who in the world, in our world, knows of such a place by that name or any other? But Shirley and I, working with God TV, which is a channel that not enough people know about, though it's international, and they started a crusade called Cape Town to Cairo, and they wanted to build freshwater wells in all the 40 nations of Africa. I didn't even know then there were 40 nations in Africa, but they settled on Tanzania at that point. So Shirley and I, my wife, paid for a well we had to go down 500 feet to finally find fresh water sparkling up out of the ground. And we put a windmill there, solar powered, and it's still operating. And we're women who walk across the desert in those 40 nations with empty buckets on their heads or shoulders, maybe taking a child along, and with another empty bucket, and they get water out of a muddy ditch where cattle come and they drink and other animals drink and poop. and they take all the debris out of the water, bring it home, and that's what they give their children. And their children have a life expectancy of 5.
Wow.
If
I read that and I just dropped my head on that.
well, that's right, and it is true that it's a miracle if children in those countries live to be older than 5. If they do, then there's a chance they might grow up to be adults. But they're drinking poison. And so our freshwater well there, the government, which is a Muslim government, said, look, we know you're Christians, you people with God TV, and we know that you want to convert everybody, but if you bring in a freshwater well, we'll give you, I think they said 100 miles around your well, and you can put they put a building there if you want, but don't call it a church. So what we have is the Pat and Shirley Boone Life Center in Tanzania. And it was because we had done that we met with a group that's based in Springfield, Missouri. I hope you've heard of them, because they're ministering right now to the 320 million people in sub-Sahara desert. But the entity is called World Serve International. And they've been for several years now, trying to raise the money from various sources, mainly Christian causes and sources. And they're bringing in those freshwater wells in other countries, but they made our well in Tanzania sort of the centerpiece of this video and song that we recorded as a We Are the World type thing. Right. And I'm calling ours We Are the Well.
That's
We are the well.
And we are now have drilled or at least raised the money to drill 2 or 3 more wells, and the money's coming in as people hear the song and see the video. And all these country performers, performers justifiably sometimes get bad press from people, sometimes the way they live in country music in particular, which, if you're going to write a surefire hit, make it a beer drinking song or a bar song or a infidelity song, and you have a better chance. I mean, I got friends in what is it, Garth Brooks in Low Places.
Right.
Yeah,
I got friends.
Garth Brooks. Yeah,
Garth Brooks, and so you have a better chance having a hit record if you're a country music writer and write about those things. But when country performers, like other performers in other music, are approached to do something for somebody that's worthy, they line up and they will do it. And that's how we got all those artists that came together to record with me. Gosh, I've got their names all listed because I'll forget their names. Lee Greenwood, of course, Larry Gatlin, Pam Tillis, Alabama, Vince Gill, of course, Aaron Goodwin, and others that I hadn't known really by name, Jet Jurgensmeyer, Mark 209, and others. And they come aboard and they sing and they give it their all. And they don't ask for anything in return. They just want to help people. And, I tip my hat, this cap that's advertising our one song. And of course, when we were recording, before we knew this group existed, but they were in Nashville. And it's a group of naturalized citizens from that part of the world, including Tanzania. And they have, let's see, their name, I got their name here, is Legacy Mission Village Singers. Now, that we didn't know that group existed till we were in the studio in Reba McEntire's studio recording. And when we heard about them, that they get together periodically, frequently, and sing their songs together, including gospel songs in Swahili. Wow. And that's the incredible sound you hear on the record and even see in the video of these people from that part of the world. And it makes me cry every time I hear them sing. It is an unusual sound. They're singing the lyrics that I wrote, some of the lyrics with Jimmy Bishop and Frank Myers. Frank Nichols. No, Jimmy Nichols, what did I say?
Jimmy Nichols, yes, sir.
Nichols and Frank Myers. They helped me write the song, but I had written most of it by the time we got together, words and music. And I don't play an instrument or read music, but it just came to me. It was given to me, the
Wow.
song by God, I think, that when these singers, they add their voices, they are singing for their own people. They're singing for their own children. They're singing that, hoping that we will help them create fresh water to lengthen the lives of these people in those countries whose governments don't supply it. And so they're just on their own unless somebody like we do comes to help them. And so now you guys, you may not have intended it, but you're part of it.
No,
Because
I think that's wonderful. I've done a lot in Malawi, just south of there as well, just north of the Longway, Malawi, or Area 45. Built a school and a sports facility to help get kids in, to kind of get them jobs and stuff. And in Malawi, when you talk about how poor people are, I think people don't realize how poor 91% of people in Malawi don't have electricity. And they don't have running water. You are literally changing people's lives. You're saving people's lives with these wells. It's one of the best possible things that you can do when you have something like this. How hard was it to get all the collaboration together of all these great stars and to get them together for a music video?
It took time. It was difficult because now some people whose names I won't mention, so I won't embarrass them, have asked, why didn't you let us be part of this? Why didn't you let me? I would have done it with you. And I say to them, look, I tried to get you, but your reps, the people I had to go through to get to you, never gave you the message. We couldn't wait forever. So we went ahead and recorded with the ones that we could reach, and it happily came aboard. And now we're considering the possibility of a second version of the song with a bunch more performers who have said, hey, we would have sung with you. Why didn't you call us? And I'm saying, I tried. I couldn't get through the wall it takes
Yeah.
to get through to you. You're too popular, even though you're right there in Nashville, and you could have driven over and to record with us if we could have gotten through to you. But I am so thrilled with the group that did come aboard, and we're asking them to put the song on their websites and make more and more people aware. That's another way we can make it better known. But man, I am so glad to know that you know the area, and you also know this, that their diet, those people who they live like they did 3,000 years ago. Still, there are still huts that people live in that are built of cow dung, bricks of cow dung. Now, when it rains, which it hardly ever does, and those parts, you can imagine what happens to some of those houses. They have to go in and reconstruct. But those people don't know what it is to eat vegetables. So in around the Pat Boone Life Center there, we have the Shirley Boone vegetable garden that started out, but now it's a vegetable farm because we're teaching them how to eat something other than just beans and rice and whatever meat they might get from a lizard or a snake or a rabbit, whatever they can capture. That's the only meat they have. And that's their diet. They don't know about vegetables. So we're trying to educate that whole part of the world to green vegetables and get the minerals and vitamins from those vegetables. And I will say, the people of Israel and the irrigation system they created has come aboard to help us turn dry desert into fresh Israel type land that can grow vegetables and create all the things that we need. The Bible prophesies that in the last days, Israel will become like the Garden of Eden. Well, it is right now. I mean, they're supplying flowers and vegetables to Europe and from greater than any other source. And the other thing we did with our well was create a wood frame school. And I broke ground for it with a shovel, but I had to get a guy with a pickaxe first to break up the soil so I could get the tip of my shovel into it. But we're trying to raise the literacy level. They don't have schools in those vast areas. So how do the kids learn a language other than the language they grew up with? And how can they learn anything, even math or any other subjects, geography, history? They don't have schools in many cases to go to. So there's a 8th grade level school that we put in along with our well. And of course, I hope that'll be become sort of the rule as we build the other wells through one. One is for one nation, one God, and one people when we are united and come together. But one person has his own worth in God's eyes. And I could talk forever about it, but I know you guys would allow me to say that we all have a final exam, that Jesus has already given us the questions on our final exam when we stand before him at last. When I was sick, poor, naked, hungry, and in prison, did you visit me? Did you care? Did you hear about me and just ignore it? And now we're trying to make people aware that people need us. And now it's up to us to answer the questions on our own final exam. I want to be able to say to Jesus when he asked me those questions, yes, I did literally visit you. I didn't just care. I've been to many prisons now in my career, because I want to say, when I knew you were in prison, and you are in many of those people in the prisons, they did wrong things, but they belong to you. They gave their subsequent lives to you. And so, I'm involved. I want to be able to say, yes, I visited you when you were in prison, and those people.
One thing, Mr. Boone, that you've always done, and it's something that I admire so much, is that when they did the right thing in history, when it was very unpopular. You had
Yeah,
the Pat Boone Show, and Chevrolet was your sponsor, and the Chevrolet in the South did not want you to have as many blacks on your television show. So
that's
you
right.
got
But they didn't call them blacks, though. They used a different word, as you know. I was born and raised in the South, and born in Jacksonville and raised in Nashville. You're right. And Chevrolet, how did you know this? I guess I must have blabbed it somewhere else. But yes, they
Oh, Mr. Layfield's an Abilene Christian graduate, Mr.
That's
Boone.
right. I've known about you my whole life. I'm always wanted to meet you. I said
well,
off air, and I want to say it on air. Grant Boone, your nephew, is a dear friend of mine. So that's how you're a legend everywhere, but you're especially a legend at Abilene, where there's a building named after you now. And so everybody who grew up in Abilene knows all about you.
and there's one now in Nashville too. There's a theater built in Nashville, and then there's a curriculum in Pepperdine University called the Pat Boone Family Life Center, and we teach people for college credit how to be moral enough and look for morality in friends and maybe future mates in marriage, and how to build marriages. So yeah, I have tried to use my platform as a singer, and even first as a teen idol. And in the Pat Boone Chevy show, I was the youngest guy ever to have his own at 21, 22, his own musical variety show, and all these great artists coming on with me. I'm talking about Sammy Davis and Ella Fitzgerald and Nat King Cole and all these great, and the Mills Brothers. I don't think I had the Ink Spots. No, but the Mill Brothers followed their example, and they came after them. But yeah, when Harry Belafonte called me one day in my 3rd year, and he said, I've been watching your show. And of course, he was the biggest entertainer in the world at that time. Down the way where the nights are gay and the I don't remember all the words. Jamaican farewell. And he said, I like the way you treat your guests. And I knew what he was talking about. And he said, would you like me to come on and sing with you? I said, of course I would. Are you kidding? I mean, man, he was the biggest entertainer in the world at that point. But when I met with the producers of the show and the sponsors, Chevrolet and ABC Network, They said, "What? We can't have Harry Belafonte on your show." I said, "Why?"
Wow.
Well, he's making a lot of civil rights noises, and Chevrolet is saying we're going to lose a lot of customers in the South because they're coming in and saying, we like Pat Boone, we like Chevrolet, we drive Chevys, but he has all those blacks on it with the shows with him, and we may just switch over to Ford. I mean, this was literally the case. So
Wow.
they said, we can't have Harry Belafonte. I said, wait a minute.
Huh.
If it's called the Pat Boone Chevy Show, isn't it? Yes. But if I have to say no, if Pat Boone has to say no to Harry Belafonte, it's not the Pat Boone Show. So I'm going to have to ask you to get somebody else to take over the show from here. And they said, wait a minute, you're going to walk off your show for that? I said,
Good for you.
oh, look, I'm aware of the problem. I grew up in the middle of it, but I'm not going to continue to perpetuate that racial bigotry. And so, no, I am serious. And but they said, well, look, if we have him come on, would you at least guarantee us with him and you, there will be no civil rights statements made? I said, our singing together, I'm sure Harry will agree, will be enough of a statement. Just us singing together as friends and fellow entertainers. And that's all he would ask. And he'll understand the problem if we tell him. That's what he's crusading against. So they said, well, okay, but we were not able to work out the schedules. I wish it had happened. It would have happened. But because it didn't, I did not renew my contract for the fourth year. I just left the show and went to specials instead. Not too long ago, a guy stepped out of an Escalade. It was almost dark here in LA at the gym. And he was getting back into this Escalade. I was walking by and I heard a voice say, Pat, is that you? Is that Pat Boone? Yes. And Jamie Foxx jumped down from the Escalade. And he said, he asked me, is this true what I heard, what you did when you in your show in the 50s? I said, yeah, but how did you hear about it? I don't talk about it. And, well, I did hear about it. He said, well, when was that? I said, it was 1959. And he said, can I give you a hug?
I love it.
Of course, that Jamie Foxx hugged me and he said, look, if somebody did that today, no big deal. But that was 1959 and you were going to lead your own show. And he said, I just want you to know that I love you. And that was from Jamie Foxx, which I appreciated a lot. Yeah. So I don't know, maybe the word's getting around somehow. I don't know how you even knew about it.
Yeah. Research.
That's right. I'd watched some interviews with you when I was texting with your nephew Grant yesterday about this thing. He told me some of these stories.
Yeah. So I mean, I have, of course, people have brought it up, and I played golf a lot with his daughter Sherry, and when she heard about this, she hadn't known, and when we got off the golf course in Palm Springs, the Sinatra tournament, she said, can we call my mama and tell her about this? I said, sure. I called and talked to Harry's wife, and Harry was still alive at that time, but he would have echoed it, of course, but he was not feeling well and wasn't performing anymore, and now he's gone. But yeah, that's a matter of history that very few people know about. But Jesse Jackson, let me just mention one other thing since we're talking about this whole situation. I did an album, which you don't know about, I'll bet, because we don't have the ways to promote all these albums. But it was Pat Boone R&B classics, subtitled "We Are Family," and I recorded all these great, incredible songs, new versions, but sounding exactly like their versions, with them, and including Sister Sledge. Gosh, I'll forget all the names of them, but James Brown, of course, I was saving him for last, but but all these were great songs, great hit songs with the original performers. So it sounded just like their records, but here I am singing in the middle of their songs with them. And of course, I did do James Brown. Um, what's the song I did? Oh, Papa's Got a Brand New Bag. And hey, Pat's got a brand new bag.
All right.
Recorded the song with James Brown.
Yeah.
And but how do you promote an album like that?
Yeah.
Right.
But then when I was promoting it on the Rainbow Coalition station in Chicago, and Jesse, Sancita Jackson, Jesse Jackson's daughter, was interviewing me, and I was telling her about this album, and she was asking me what it was like to record with the Four Tops, with Sister Sledge, with all of these great performers, and she said, "Wait a minute," to the engineer, "Is that who I think it is?" "Yeah, put him on." And it was her dad, Jesse Jackson, listening to the broadcast. He said, we learned to love Pat Boone back when he was just getting started, because his dad, Red Foley, sang our spirituals. His father-in-law, Red Foley. And then here was Pat Boone singing our rhythm and blues called race music songs, and then bringing the performers on his television show with him. And Jesse Jackson said, "I'm going to say something I haven't said before, but I think Pat Boone did more for race relations with his music than any other artist at that time, because he was a white kid, a white Christian kid from Nashville, and he was singing these songs and letting parents know maybe it wasn't devil music after all, and
Right.
and that these songs were harmless, and that their kids could go out and buy those records and even get to know the original writers like Little Richard and all the others of those songs." So when Jesse Jackson made that statement, which hardly anybody's ever heard him say except me, whoever was listening that day, it just told me that God was in all of this, and I was trying to use the platform that he'd given me, not just for my own amusement and for my own fame or whatever, but I had thought I was going to be a teacher preacher when I was at North Texas State and I made my first record. I was already preaching in a little country church out in Slidell, about 30 miles out of Denton, and so I was on my way there. But then when I made my first record, and then one heart's not enough, baby. Two hearts will make you feel crazy. One kiss will make you feel so nice. Two kisses take you to paradise. Two hearts, two kisses make one love. That silly little R&B song, recorded by the Charms on the Dutone label, went to not to number one, but it was a million seller. And after that, the next record was Ain't That a Shame, Fats Domino. And all of a sudden, I was a teen idol singing rock and roll and race music. In fact, those first two records went on the R&B charts because many of the DJs, because I got enough of the spirit and flavor of those songs, they thought I was black.
The spirit, I like that.
I was on the R&B charts with Ain't That a Shame and with Two Hearts, Two Kisses as an R&B artist. So anyway, that's some history that hardly anybody knows.
Yeah. Now, when you're doing this, the reaction from your fans, what was it like? I mean, did you get some negative feedback? I know with Fats Domino, he really admired. Little Richard said you made him a rich man by covering his song there. So that had to be a feel good moment to you when you hear stuff like that.
Well, yes, it was, but I did have my share of criticism because people had not looked into it. They didn't know rhythm and blues. I hadn't known what rhythm and blues music was until Randy Wood of Dot Records had me sing that song by the Charms, and it was a group singing it, and I had to sing it as the lead singer with a couple of studio singers. And then Ain't That a Shame, I said that when I recorded Fats Domino's Ain't That a Shame, that he sang it roll and I sang it rock, because his was you made boom,
Yeah.
boom, me cry, boom, boom. When you say
Yeah.
boom, boom, his was a rolling rhythmic take. But when I sang it, you made me cry when you said goodbye. Ain't that a shame? But mine was rocking and his was rolling. But what he and Little Richard both said that they made more money from my records of their songs because it was to the bigger white pop market. And they had written those songs. And in Fat's case, had published them. Little Richard didn't know enough. He didn't know what publishing was. So they took advantage of him. But and he got even with them later. But I was enriching them, yes, literally making more money than on royalties than I was from my own records because I was getting a little 3% royalty because I was a beginner. But Fats and Little Richard were getting 6 or 8% because they wrote the songs.
They wrote it.
What,
Well,
what was it?
some,
What was it about that time that, certain moments in history create certain great characters? You don't see it every generation, but that generation had James Brown, that James generation had Fats Domino, Little Richard, you had Elvis. What was it
Chuck
about that
Berry.
time that created these incredible stars?
Well, that's a good question. There was a couple of things that happened at the same time. One was the discovery there was a teen market. I mean, the merchandisers found out that most kids had some little income or something they could buy things themselves, and they didn't want to necessarily buy clothes that looked like their parents, and that they were listening to music, and they could call into radio and request things that they wanted to hear again. And of course, the the doors open to what was then called race music, rhythm and blues, but producers like Mitch Miller at Columbia and other places, and Decca Records, they could have pop artists record some of those songs and have pop hits with them. It was a new fertile field of songs that were hooky and fun and clever and memorable. And so that's when R&B just took over. It was a whole fertile new field of catchy commercial music, and kids that discovered that they could borrow money or get money from mom and dad and buy some of those records. I was listening to Bing Crosby back when mom and dad had Crosby records, so that's when I became a fan of the guy who makes singing seem so easy and so casual. And that's the way I tried to start singing. And all of a sudden I was saying, "You made me cry." Anyway, I was suddenly singing rhythm and blues, but it was catchy, it was commercial, it was a whole new market, and it just exploded. And now I'm still doing every week, about 4 or 5 times a week on Sirius XM, Pat Boone's 50s Gold on Sirius XM, and I play for an hour the music of my era, in which I had 41 chart records in the 50s. It really was only the last half of the 50s, from 55 through 59. Elvis had 40 chart records, but then of course he kept having them after me. And I would have one now and then into the 60s as well. But and then now and then, very now and then, now today back in the charts again, and Billboard celebrating the fact that it was 70 years ago.
63 years.
63 years that
8 months.
63 years and 8 months from the first adult contemporary chart when they first started it at Billboard. And I was in it with Frank Sinatra and Crosby at that time. And now all these years later, I'm back in it again with this song, One. And so they were tipping, they were tipping their hat to me, and I'm happy to receive the tip.
Do you ever
go ahead?
Do you ever look back and say, and you drop names, and you're not dropping names, but you're just mentioning friends. But it's incredible to hear names like Frank Sinatra, Fats Domino, all the names that you mentioned as contemporaries of yours. You own a lot of buildings, your name on a lot of buildings around the world. Do you ever just look and think, that's pretty cool? That's pretty cool.
Oh, of course, yes. And it goes back to something that I've never talked about publicly, I don't think, but I will now. Mama, I was their first child, and she was a registered nurse, and she and Daddy both solid Christian people. So I was born, and in my infancy, Mama did what Hannah did with little Samuel when the high priest was Eli, and the woman couldn't have a baby, and so she went to see the Eli, the big high priest in Israel, and was praying and by herself, and the old prophet thought she was mumbling and she was drinking. And she said, "No, I'm just praying." "What are you praying for?" She said, "I want a son. I can't seem to have a son." So he said, "Next year, this time you will have your son." And she did. And then because of that, she gave little Samuel to Eli the prophet to serve him the rest of his life. Well, Mama picked me up as a little infant in her hands and held him up to God and said, "He's yours, Lord. Use him however you want." Now, I didn't know that until, a few years ago, but I did wonder why in the world I had all this fame and my brother didn't and my two sisters didn't, and why I was so favored. But I take it back to then when I didn't know anything much at all. I was just a little baby when Mama held me up and said, "You take him, Lord." And so in my early career, which I thought I was going to be a teacher preacher, but when I made my first record and it took off, became a million seller, and then more and more and more, I realized God was giving me a platform, and I might reach more teenagers from that platform with what would be a good influence, I hoped, than I could in a classroom somewhere or from a pulpit somewhere, in a located pulpit. And so I've always had that feeling that my career was a gift from him. I tell you, it exceeded anything I could ever have dreamed of, and sung in more categories of music, and to have done 2,700 songs, more than any other artist who ever will record, because nobody's ever going to touch that record, 2,700 and counting. And so God had a purpose in it. And I've tried, I wrote books for teenagers then, and they were bestseller books, Twixt 12 and 20 in the late 50s. And that my first book, I was still in college, of advice for kids, while I was a teen idol singing rock and roll and big band swing and other things too. But that book, Twixt 12 and 20, was a #1 bestseller, rivaled only by Norman Vincent Peale's Power of Positive Thinking, and Art Linkletter's Kids Say the Darndest Things. And in the middle of that is Pat Boone's Twixt 12 and 20 of practical advice for teens. And that's why, and then I also recorded the first million-selling hymn album, Hymns We Love, because I knew my teenage fans most of them didn't know those songs and would never hear them maybe unless I sang them. So I did an album of the songs I was singing and song leading in church. And it's called Hymns We Love, and it was the first million-selling hymn album while I was a teen idol. I mean, and married with kids. I mean, it was unthinkable. It was just unbelievable, except it was God granting favor to me. And as a result, I've always tried not to let him down and make him sorry that he gave me the platform.
Right. Well, the video is One. That's the name of the song. It's about the Tanzanian, specifically water crisis in East Africa and all throughout Africa, from Cape Town to Cairo, and about how you can change lives, and they are changing lives. These wells change people's lives. They save people's lives. And Mr. Pat Boone, being the director of this video, One, please check it out and support as you can.
Can I just give you you go to onefortanzania.org. That's easy. One, that spell out ONEFOR, Tanzania.org, and a red button will pop up when you go there, and it's the giving button. And I'm asking women to take their kids there and let them know that they can give to help other kids like them live to be older than 5. by giving them fresh water to drink and get the kids involved. One for Tanzania.org.
We'll put that up on the screen for you.
We'll put it up. Mr. Boone, thank you so much.
It's Pat, by the way.
Pat,
Thank you.
I'm going to have a tough time with that, but thank you so
Thank you.
much.
And maybe
Thank
we'll
you.
do it again sometime. Thanks.